Fuck Albuquerque. I was talking to a friend a week or so ago. Oh, how's my hair? Wszystko That's Polish for everything is in order. Too bad for the Polish there in Warszawa and Warsaw that what is in order mostly of the time is getting their ass handed to them because they're in the middle of this fucking need for an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object type of place. They get the ass and that's what happens. You've been put into your hands this riddle for all your life. What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? I realized it had to do with love becoming hate and something like that. And all that is left is a fucking black cloud of the dust of what was. And you eat each other alive in there till there's nothing left. That's what you get with Warsaw from year to year to year to year. They get the fucking ass into everything. Siskov Bazunka, everything is in order. That's not very encouraging. Fuck Albuquerque. And I found out that this friend had affiliations with Albuquerque, as I do when I have been known to say on this thing, fuck Albuquerque, in the same manner that I say, fuck Texas. The only difference is, and I realized I had to explain it to him when I said it, was that I mean it when I say fuck Texas. Albuquerque, that was just something when I was on the radio at 90.5 FM KSJS San Jose. Ow! From Coyote Peak, you know. I took a trip to Kansas once because I'd never had a beer there. It was Christmas time. I knew I wasn't going to make it all the way back to Michigan from San Jose. I said, every time I go around Kansas, whether I'm coming across the top of the states or the bottom of the states, no matter how you're going, where you're going, somehow you end up missing Kansas, which is the middle of America. You just naturally miss it. And so this time I decided, I got a little bit of Christmas time here. I'll go to Kansas and get my Kansas beer, because I don't believe you've actually ever been to a state unless you've had a beer there, unless you've been able to sit down with the people and see what the location is about. And so I drove to Kansas, and I didn't know where I was going. I told this friend, I said, I can't tell you the story. I said, it's not one I share very openly, so I'm going to leave a part out of it. I was in a Volkswagen 1985 Volkswagen Scirocco. That thing was like a go-kart, and whoever owned it before me put strut supports and all this stuff. That thing handled like a dream. Only the antenna broke off and my CD player quit working. So all I could get most of the way as you come through towns, it flew off on the way. I was like, son of a bitch, there goes the radio. And so I'm driving to fucking Kansas. You know, all you could get was Christian radio. And so I have no problem with that. It's very educational. You know your enemy type of thing. I listen to it all day long, and the things that I have to offer you from the things I've heard would be very disconcerting. But I had no idea where I was going in Kansas. And just as I'm crossing straight state line in this Volkswagen Scirocco going through the mountains, even down south, I had to go down near LA that way direction, down south to get across that way. In the mountains, my feet were cold because a Volkswagen doesn't have a good heater. You might have heard something about that before. They might have gotten better since then. And I'm driving, I'm thinking, I have no idea where I'm going in Kansas. I had an atlas there. I always carry an atlas because you can't count on cell phone signals, and we didn't have cell phones back then. You kids, you need to learn how to read a map. Pay attention to the elevation ones too. You might need those. Every line is 5 meters. You just do the multiplication. If you did okay, no kid left behind, right? You'll be all right with your math. I'm driving and saying, where the hell am I going in Kansas? I'm just on the freeway, and this big brr, brr, truck was blowing by me, and I said, Jesus, man. And I looked, and I saw on the side it said Liberal, Kansas. And I said, well, let's take a look at that. And so I looked at the atlas, and it was the closest place I could get in Kansas from where I was. And I was like, how perfect. I don't have to go to Wichita, Dodge City, nothing like that. I'll go to Liberal. They call it Liberal because when people would pass through there in their horses and buggies and shit like that, they'd give water for free. And people were like, oh, because they charged in other towns. And they'd say, that's mighty liberal of you. There's a wonderful air museum there. There really is, and a good VFW hall. And right across the border into Oklahoma, you can get some real salsa dancing going on. Oh, no, mariachi. And the whole bar stops when you walk in, and they look at you. Even the band stops. And then they start playing again, and next thing you know, you're playing pool with Shorty who speaks some English. Great fucking vacation spot for the kids. Because on Christmas Eve, as it was, they closed the bar there in Liberal early. There was just the one woman in there, and I was like, I need a beer. And she said, sorry, I'm going home. And she was very attractive. This is why I don't tell this story, and it's got nothing to do with it. I don't mean to make anybody feel like I'm talking about a woman. And I was like, she's older, but maybe she could give me a place to stay. But because it was closed, I went over to the VFW hall, and they told me I could go across the border. They gave me a place to stay, a hotel. They told me that's a good place to stay, and that's where I had my last VFW payments made. It was right there in Liberal. When I pulled into that place, a coyote ran in front of me, and then I found out later that's a sign of good luck to see a coyote. And I went in there, and my VFW haul was just coming to an end at the first of the year. It was Christmas Eve, and they said, well, you can sign here. And I said, middle of America, that makes sense. I can get there from anywhere. So I re-upped. I'm a member of the Liberal Kansas VFW, except I'm in default. I haven't paid in a while. So anyway, had a good time there. Driving back, listening to Christian radio every 50 miles. Comes on, goes out, comes on, goes out. I'm coming into Albuquerque, and all of a sudden, the music just took off. And that's the only time in my entire life that I've heard the song by Rod Stewart called Cigarettes and Alcohol. And that's the only time in my entire life that I have liked Rod Stewart. I listened to that, I said, wow, there's really something to that. And then they started playing a bunch of other rock and roll and stuff. I'm like, I'm coming into fucking Albuquerque. I might as well stop for the night. And so I went, pulled into a cheap motel there, got a room, and opened up the phone book to taverns and bars, and I found one. The closest one I could find was 3 miles away, and I said, so I'll just walk down there and I can get a ride back, take a cab. I went out and walked the 3 miles to the bar, and it was bitter cold, and there were flecks of snow coming down in the streets. It was like, I'm in fucking New Mexico. Why is everything so fucking cold? Oh. Then I got to the bar and I realized it's because of the hearts of the people. I was just sitting there, by myself having a beer. Went into the bathroom, and there's this guy standing in front of the urinal with a buck knife with a huge line of coke on it, and he turns around and he looks at me and he says, "My name's Slick." And I'm like, "How you doing, Slick?" He's, yeah, pretty good. And I said, wow. So I took my pee and I went back to my table, and it wasn't 2 minutes later. I'd seen this happening, but I didn't know why I was noticing it. There was a Mexican man, obviously immigrant Mexican man, sitting there with a pretty woman. And it's not that it caught me as unusual or anything like that. I just noticed them. And so all of a sudden, I see movement out of the corner of my eye, and here comes Slick, and he's got a beer bottle, and he busts it over that fucking guy's head, and he's got blood coming down his face, and this woman, this hackly old woman that had come and sat next to me and was talking to me from the next table, she was just like, how, I'm trying to, why are you so quiet? I'm like, I'm just here. And that's when that happened, and this guy fucking busts this goddamn thing off his head, and she jumps up. She says, "Oh no, Slick!" And he was a long, lean, like I said, like Junior and me, long and lean, like practically fucking Abe Lincoln's strength. This guy, and he's just on him, and she's like, "Oh no, Slick!" This woman that I've never met, and I just met Slick myself, seemed like a nice enough guy. And so all the people were pulling him off, and that fucking guy went out fucking bleeding into the street. I'm like, well, this is going to be interesting. And the thing is, got back to the motel, got back to San Jose, and I was supposed to work that day, and I was back in time to do it, except at that point, after Albuquerque, which I'm not saying fuck Albuquerque, it's just in the San Jose State radio thing, KSJS thing, where you had to describe things. They asked worst drinking experience on some form you had to fill out for their internet stuff. And I just wrote Albuquerque. I got back and I shaved myself from my armpits, my chest, all the way to the ankles. Armpits to ankles. I called into work that day because I was in the shower for hours just trying to get the fucking Albuquerque off of me. Like I said, not fuck Albuquerque. I'm sure there's a lot of nice stuff going on there, but I just wanted to make it clear, for the record, the right kind of person can have a whole lot of fun in Albuquerque.